All right, hi everyone. Today we're working on our last activity for this year, this COVID year. We took longer than we had to. Normally, we would have been doing this way back in March, but because of the way the classes were, this is actually was pushed out, and this is kind of like our culminating task. And today, what we're doing is we're doing what we call the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, it can be summed up as what I call the hammer. It helps us solve quadratic equations, regardless of how they look like. And the answer could be a decimal, it could be a fraction. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's factorable. It doesn't matter. For a lot of cases, we can just use it in all these cases. It just works. I like to say it just works. In math, this is one of the only things that just works all the time. So let's look at it. So it's called the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. Okay, so make sure you do write this down. This works whenever you have an x squared equation written in this form. A x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now, let's show you an example of this. An example of this would be, let's do 3x squared plus 2x minus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, 3x squared minus 2x minus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, and we could complete the square. We could try factoring this. We could try a lot of different things with this problem. But maybe you're on one of those off days where you just don't want to try anything else, and you're just asked to solve. And a couple of keynotes I want to make sure you guys pay attention to is like one, that these are both equal to 0. To use a quadratic formula, these both have to be 0. Another thing is you want to make sure you do have x squared, right? If it wasn't x squared, this could be an easy like August problem or level 1 problem. But the quadratic formula works like this. I'm going to say what letters A, B, and C do we have? And these are really the placeholders here. A is 3, B is 2, and C is -1. If you take a look here, I'm just labeling these numbers, which are in the positions in front of the x squared, in front of the x, and the one by itself without the x. So that's how we label these A, B's, and C's. So they're not just any numbers, it's whatever numbers that's in the right position. And if we have these numbers here, we can use this special formula. X equals to -b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and there's a song that goes with this, and a lot of kids will remember the song. And we'll find a YouTube video real quick in just a little bit so you guys can hear the song. But this formula is something that you guys will have to memorize for the next 4 years. You'll be using this for the SAT, you'll be using this in calculus, you'll be using this in Algebra 2 and pre-calc geometry. This formula will stick with you. If you remember any formula in high school, this unfortunately is that formula that you're going to use. And this formula is specifically to solve quadratic, to solve x squared problems. So how do we use this formula? This formula is x equals to -b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. A couple of things I want to tell you is that you can memorize this in like 5 minutes. If you just write it down like standards like 3-4 times, you'll remember this. It's not that hard to remember. And if we were in class, I would have done activities for you guys to remember it. But unfortunately, we're in COVID. You guys are kind of stuck at home. So I'm going to go ahead and play you guys a song here. And let's go ahead and find the song. This formula is important because x equals to your solution. What makes x, when you plug it in, makes the whole problem go to 0? So we're able to solve for any type of quadratic looking for its roots, looking for the 0. Solution for, let's say y is equal to 0, okay? X equals the numbers for y is equal to 0. So let's go ahead and plug it in. We're gonna go ahead and plug it in right here. Oops, that looks terrible. So x equals to -b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, if you take a look at what I did here, I wrote this problem out, except I left them all blanks. Every time I saw an A, B, or C, I just left it blank. Because now you guys can see how we're gonna plug in those values. X equals to -b. What's your b value? Everyone take a look here. What are my A, B, and C values? A, B, and C. Thank you very much. B is 2, so I'm just write 2 here. X equals -b, which is 2, plus and minus b squared. Well, b again is 2. Minus 4ac. A is 3. C is 1. Thank you for catching that. It's actually -1, right? So don't forget that negative sign. It's really important for our problem. All over 2a. So what we're doing is we're setting up our problem, and then we can plug in our a, b's, and c's. Now we're going to take our time here to now simplify it. So that's it. That's the setup. If you can plug in your a, b's, and c's, you are actually 90% almost all done. X equals 2. That's now distribute. A -2 becomes a -2. Plus and minus square root. Now, what goes inside? What's 2 squared? 2 squared is 4. Minus 4 times 3 is 12. And 12 times 1 is 12. And negative, it becomes a positive 12. Okay, let me do this again. -4 times 3 is -12. And -12 times -1 is a positive 12. Oftentimes, I'll just do the numbers and I'll look at the negative signs afterwards. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 1 is 12. And I have 2 negative signs, which makes it positive. All over 2a. 2a is 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. Let's keep on going. Do we know what the square root of 4 plus 12 is? Well, what is 4 plus 12? So let's do this right now. What is 4 plus 12 on the side? 4 plus 12 is 16. Great. -2 plus and minus the square root of 16 all over 6. Now, if you remember us completing the square, we're back to the very similar form that we had when we completed the square. We have a square root, and we have 2 versions. Let's go and take the square root of 16 since we can. -2 plus and minus the square root of 16 is 4 all over 6. Now we have to break it up into 2 versions. Sorry, I'm running out of space. Let me write it over here. -2 plus and minus 4 over 6. Let's write our 2 versions. Whenever you have plus minus, we have to come up with 2 different alternate realities. We have our -2 plus 4 divided by 6 and -2 minus 4 divided by 6. We have 2 different versions, right? -2 plus 4 is positive 2. And we can reduce. Can I reduce 2 and 6? We can divide them both by 2. We end up with divide by 2, divide by 2. We end up with 1 over 3. Our next one is -6 over 6 is -1. We have our 2 answers. Now, would you ever have guessed these answers to make 3x squared plus 2x minus 1 equal to 0? Nope. Okay. So this is our technique for solving quadratic formulas. We don't have to be able to factor. We don't have to complete the square. We just use this formula. Okay. So if I say solve by quadratic formula, you have to use this method. So let's practice this method a couple more times. So here we go. Here's the next problem. Here's our next example. All right. If I say x squared minus 4x minus 5 is equal to 0. Now, is this problem factorable? Can you think of, this is a level 1 problem. Can you think of 2 numbers that multiply to become 5 that subtract out to become 4? 1 times 5 is 5. Do they subtract out to become 4? Yeah. So if you want, we could go ahead and we can do this by factoring. Okay. Let's see. What numbers multiply to become 5? 1 and 5. And do they subtract out to become 4? Yes, they do. This is easily factorable. 5 times 1. And then we need more negatives than positives. We can now solve for them. What number cancels out a -5? What number cancels out a +1? We said we could solve for this by factoring by saying this is 5 and -1. If you need extra steps, you could write x minus 5 is equal to 0 and x plus 1 is equal to 0. If you need those extra steps. I'm sorry, yeah. Let me squeeze it in there. Okay, x could have been 5 and -1. If you want to do those mental math, that's also perfectly fine in this last step. Okay, now I'm going to use a quadratic formula here to show you guys we're going to get the same exact answer. Yes, it will take longer but it always works. There's nothing about guessing or trying to figure out numbers or patterns that work. Quadratic formula just works for what it is. So let's say this real quick. X is equal to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Along with this, I need to make sure I have my variables correct. A is equal to what? B is equal to what? C is equal to what? A is, what's invisible here? It's invisible 1. So if you don't see a number, remember it's going to be invisible 1 for us. Thank you. Our B is going to be negative 4. Our C is going to be negative 5. So you take the sign along with it. In our original form here, A, B, and C were all positive. See, they're all positive, 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 positive. So if you want to bring along a negative, sure, bring along a negative, but remember to take it with you. Okay, so now we have our quadratic formula. So we're going to fill this out. Now, if you guys practice it the way I do, I always write it with the blanks and fill in the negatives afterwards, the numbers afterwards. So I say x equals to negative b blank plus the minus square root of b squared, which is a blank squared, minus 4ac, which blank blank, all over 2a blank. When I do this, it takes the pressure off me trying to fill everything at once. Well, every time I have a letter, I just write a parentheses and I can fill in that parentheses afterwards. X equals negative b plus the minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, just in case I messed up something along the way. Now I can go back and fill out our b's, a's, and c's. X equals to negative b, which is negative 4, plus the minus square root of b squared, which is negative 4 squared minus 4ac, 4a, and c, all over 2a. Okay, we have a, b's, and c's here, and I fill them in. Hopefully you guys can see by the colors that these numbers are where they're from. Now, our step is to just simplify. Let's get rid of all the parentheses everywhere. A negative times a negative is a positive. X equals to negative, negative is a positive 4, plus and minus the square root of. Now, I'm going to save you guys some time. You guys want me to save you guys some time? Do you guys think it'll be easier if I save you some time? And what we're going to do here, instead of writing this here, we are going to take a side step. Let's go ahead and do this right here. What is negative 4 squared? Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. Now what's negative 4 times 1? That's negative 4. And negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20, plus 20. What's 16 plus 20? 16 plus 20, 10 plus 20 is 30, so that's 36. And then I want to write this back here. And by doing this, we're going to save ourselves one easy step. So instead of having to write it over again, as you can see right here, we had to write it, then we wrote it, and then we had to write it again. So to save ourselves one step, which could save us, 20 seconds, we're going to go ahead and just do it on the side. And then bring back our inside value back inside. Hopefully you can find that as an easy step to help you guys out here. All right. Now, do you guys know what the square root of 36 is? Probably, right? The square root of 36 is equal to 4 plus and minus 6 all over 2. Now we have two versions of it, 4 plus 6 over 2 and 4 minus 6 over 2. Now, as you guys start doing the problems, you guys are going to be asked to do 10 problems, right? You guys are going to be writing this out in your notebook. You're going to, on your homework, you're going to be asked to take a picture of 10 problems, at least 10 problems, to show me that you're doing all the steps. And then you can upload those onto Schoology to receive credit for it. Okay? So you guys will have to submit work. Now, I don't want you guys pulling out your cell phones and then just taking a picture of it and photo mapping this, because it's not going to teach you the skill that you need. And when I ask you guys to write out the work, I'm expecting to see this work the way I've set it up for you. 4 plus 6 is 10. 10 over 2 is 5. If you skip any steps along the way, if you jump from here to here, I'm going to think that you're going to be cheating, because a lot of this stuff you have to write it out so you can see the numbers, and then you're going to have to reduce. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. Over 2, that's going to give us negative 1. Okay, so I need you guys to write out the work. If you guys don't write out the work, I can't give you the credit for it. And these are going to be easy problems once you've learned to practice using quadratic formula. Okay, let's do another problem here. Okay, so we have two answers here, is 5 and -1. And please be observant here that those are actually the same answers we got previously. Okay, the quadratic formula is a beast, I would say. It can take on any type of challenge, whether they're going to be fractions or not fractions. And even if they're not nice whole numbers, they're going to be square roots. So let's look at some square root numbers now. So you guys are going to need a calculator for IXL to help you guys solve for this. And here's a problem that we're going to work on. Let me pull up a problem here. So we're trying to solve it. And the problem is 8x squared plus 8x plus 2 is equal to 0. Now this problem, we could try factoring out the 2, but the thing about the quadratic formula is that you don't need to do anything special. We just have to set up our a's, our b's, and then our c's. Okay, set up our a, b's, and c's. Set up our a, b's, and c's. So let's see what happens here. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now let's go ahead and fill in our numbers that we have for a, b's, and c's. Hopefully you'll see that a is in front, a, b, and c. This is the exact order that we would think about letters, a, b's, and c's. A is 8, b is 8, and c is 2. Okay. So x equals to negative b, which is 8, plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, which is 8 again, all over 2a. We could go ahead and process this, but remember I have a little hint here. So if we say x equals to negative 8 plus and minus, instead of doing it here, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the side to save ourselves some time. Let's do this over here. 8 squared is 64. 4 times 8 is 32. 32 times 2 is 64. 32 times 2 is 64. Hey, what's 64 minus 64? Turns out that's actually going to be 0 for us. So we can bring this back into the square root, and that's going to be 0 all over 2a, which is 16. So sometimes we actually end up with 0 here. X equals to a square root of 0 is 0. That gives us negative 8 over 16. You can say plus and minus 0, but that just cancels out. And 8 divided by 16 is negative 1 over 2, because we can divide them both by 8. Okay, so sometimes we end up with 0, which is great. That means our answer is negative 1/2. Okay, let's try another problem. Now this one you will need your calculator for. It's going to be 9x squared minus 7x plus 1 is equal to 0. Now again, remember for this IXL, you're going to have to show your work, and you're going to take a picture of about 10 problems, and you're going to submit those along with your IXL work. So A is equal to B is equal to C is equal to, because we're going to use x equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All over means everyone gets this fraction, okay? I put this line for everyone. Don't forget that. If you draw it short, a lot of people will get a little bit lazy, and then they'll start drawing a little short. They might just draw it over here, and then that'll be confusing later. Some people will miss it a little bit. I want you guys to make sure you guys draw it all over 2a. So make sure you get that division sign all the way across. Okay, let's fill out the numbers. What's your A, B's, and C's? Hopefully you guys are getting the pattern already. A is the front number, B is the middle number, and C is the last number. if you are missing any numbers, you put a 0 in there instead. Thank you. You would put a 0 in there. If it was no x's, you would put a 0 there. So x equals to negative b plus the minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. So you guys can use a calculator here. So we'll see negative is a positive 7. Plus and minus the square root. Now, we said let's do this on the side. And that's going to be negative 7 times negative 7 is 49. And 4 times 9 is 36 minus 36. And if you want to use, you can use a calculator here. But 49 minus 36 is 13. That's positive 13 all over 2 times 9 is 18. Now, we end up with a problem here that we cannot solve by hand. A square root of 13 is not a square rootable number. So let's go ahead and practice this on my cheap calculator here. So I'm going to type it, as you guys can see, as we see it. But you have to remember to push equal sign, okay? So we're going to come up with two different versions. 7 plus and minus square root of 13 over 18 is two versions. Let's look at the two versions. 7 plus the square root of 13 divided by 18, and 7 minus the square root of 13 over 18. Okay. So we had to practice knowing how to use our calculators so we can do this. So let's go ahead and use this calculator. I'll tell you guys how to type it in. For the first one, 7 plus square root of 13 over 18, I can actually type it as I see it. 7 plus, but then on my cheap calculator, you guys might have nicer calculators once again. I'm going to hit 13 first and then hit the square root button afterwards. Then afterwards, I'm going to hit equals to mix the top button together, then divide this by 18. So that's how I'm going to hit these buttons. This is the order. I'm going to hit 7 plus 13 square root equals, this is the top. This is 10.60 is 13 plus square root of 7 plus square root of 13. Then we're going to divide this number by 18. And my first answer is approximately 0.59. The reason why is because I'm rounding up. I still want you to round up to nearest hundredths. So tenths and hundredths place. That's why I'm writing it 0.59 because 0.589 is we're going to round up. Let's look at our second one. Let's practice the second one. If you have a calculator, you guys can follow along. For 7 minus square root of 13 over 18, it's going to be 7 minus 13. We always have to write the number first for square roots. Square root that number on my cheap calculators equals to mix them together. Then we're going to divide this new number by 18. So 7 minus 13 square root equals to mix it all together. Then we divide this by 18. And our answer here is approximately 0.19, because it's 0.188, and we're going to round up. Okay, so if you round correctly, you'll get these answers in IXL. Okay, let's do another problem. Now, why is this, well, let's first explain. Why is this answer some funny calculator number? And it's because not every answer is going to be a nice whole number. Not every number is going to be a nice fraction number, okay? And if you think of a parabola, here's my parabola here. I could cross the zeros here. I could cross it here. I can really cross it really anywhere I want. And those numbers don't always have to be whole numbers, but a majority of them are actually going to be decimals. So let's do this next problem. The problem is x squared plus 7x plus 9 is equal to 0. Now you could try to factor this first to see if this is factorable. What two numbers multiplied to become 9? That's 1 and 9 and 3 and 3. Because quadratic formula, though it's always useful and always works, it's not always the smartest tool, right? It's not always the best tool. It's not the most fastest tool. But it does work when we can't do any other of our tools. We can't complete the square quickly, and if we can't factor quickly, quadratic formula is what we're going to run to. Now, you can see 3 times 3 is 9, but they don't add up to 7, and 1 times 9 is 9, but they don't add up to 7, so this isn't factorable. If this was an even number, if that was an even number, I probably would have done completing the square to be faster, but since it's not, we're going to do quadratic formula. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That means we need an a value, a b value, and then a c value. Okay, let's glean off our a, b's, and c's. And a is going to be invisible 1 for us. Our b is positive 7, and our c is positive 9. Because of that, we could for sure fill out x equals to negative b. Let's go and do that now. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, if you do this like 5, 6 times, you guys will start to get the pattern. And now we just copy a, b, and c. X equals to negative b, which is 7, plus and minus square root of b squared, which is b again, minus 4ac. A is 1, c is 9, all over 2a. Okay, it's a pretty easy pattern once we get used to it. If you're paying attention, this should be catching on for you right now. X equals to negative b, right? If you guys want me to color code this real quick. These are b's. B's are always the first two numbers you plug in. Minus 4ac, a, and then c. And then back to all over 2a. Okay, let's go ahead and do our next step. Next step is we can try solving x equals to negative 7. Negative times positive is negative, plus and minus square root. Well, square root of what? On the side here, 7 times 7 is 49. 4 times 9 is 36 minus 36. And we're stuck with square root of 13 again. That's 13. All over 2a, which is 2. Now we can plug this into our calculator. Now what calculator answers are we going to have? Negative 7 plus square root of 13. Don't forget to divide by 2. And negative 7 minus 13. Oops. All divided by 2. Now to practice this with our calculator again, let's go ahead and write it. Negative 7 plus square root of 13 divided by 2 is negative 7. So you hit the, on my calculator, I have to hit 7 first. 7, and then hit the negative sign, plus and minus, plus 13 square root symbol equals, then divide by 2. So your calculator is a tool that you guys need to know how to use. And sometimes it could be a little tricky because every calculator is a little different. So you want to know how to use your tool. 7, and then I need to put a negative sign here. See, now it's a negative 7. Plus 13 square root equals, then divide this by 2. We end up with our answer, negative 1.697. We're going to round up. Negative 1.70, rounding up. The 7 bumps up the 9 to a 10, and that bumps up the 6 to a 7. Okay, let's do the next one. So negative 7 minus square root of 13 over 2. In order to get that negative 7 on my calculator, because it's just this type of calculator, I need to write 7 first, then plus and minus. And then we're going to minus 13 square root of square root of 13 equals that to combine them, then divide this by 2. There's a lot of typing on your calculator. So I would say this is slow, but in this case, since it is a decimal answer, this is the best that we can do. So 7 plus minus 13 square root equals, that's our answer. We're going to divide this by, divided by 2. And we end up with negative 5.302. I'm going to round down, so it's negative 5.30. Okay, all right, that's it. Okay, so these are the examples of the types of problems that you guys will be coming across. Your IXL sheets. If you guys have any questions, you guys can feel free to email me. If you guys get stuck, I'll write out the answer for you and answer any questions you guys may have. If you guys want to stick around, I'll do another example. But besides that, I would say right now, go ahead and get started on our IXL. And if you do have any questions before the end of the day, please feel free to email me so I can help you guys out, okay?